Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Kierra CMD's Young Adult Educational Transitions webinar. My name is Avery Roberts, and I work in outreach and engagement for Kierra CMD. We're very excited to be highlighting and diving into a topic today that often gets overlooked, but definitely needs attention. So for today's discussion, we'll hear the voices of CMD-affected individuals as they share their journeys into adulthood, education, and independent living. As rare disease patients approach adulthood, the transition to a more independent lifestyle can be tricky. We're going to be discussing the topics of high school education, college, and living independently, and how to take ownership and self-advocate in all avenues of life. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on our YouTube channel in the coming days. We will be also utilizing the Zoom Q&A feature during the webinar. We'll have an audience Q&A towards the end of the webinar where you can ask our amazing and informative panelists your questions. You can either save them till the end or start entering them into the portal at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them then. There's also the regular Zoom chat portal. You're welcome to chat there, or if you have any tech questions or comments, we have staff monitoring both, so we are happy to answer any questions and or concerns you may have. All right, so let's meet our panelists. All of our panelists today are CMD-affected individuals and young adults in the community, including myself. We have Kierra Sunris, Molly Wagner, Annie Worthen, Griffin Groethe, Katie Nelson, Simon Cantos, and Kelly Berger here with us today. We are very excited to have you all here today and to hear about your journeys about embracing independence while living with our rare condition. Kierra CMD board member, Dr. Jody Wolf, is unfortunately not able to be with us today as our moderator due to a family emergency. So I will be the moderator for today's panel. Okay, so I am now going to turn it over to our panelists, and I'd love for you guys to just introduce yourself, say where you're from, maybe a little bit about your education, what you like to do for fun and in your free time, and maybe for older guys, maybe where you work, and that kind of stuff. So Kierra, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I am Kierra Sunris, and I am obviously a CMD community member. I am currently a junior in high school, and I go to school in North Carolina. In my free time, I really like playing video games and listening to music and stuff like that, and I'm really happy to be a part of this.
Great, thanks, Kierra. Molly, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Molly. I am in the state of Florida, and I'm attending the University of Florida right now. And my free time, I like to do any arts and crafts, anything DIYs, and cooking, reading. So yeah.
Cool. Great, Annie.
Hi, my name is Annie Worthen. I am 22 years old. I have college in 6, CMD if you're curious. I grew up in Utah, but I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and major in actuarial science. Since graduating, I'm working to become an actuary with my credentials, but I work for a firm in Phoenix. But I currently live in Hawaii because I can work from home. So that's where my parents have moved. So that's a bit about me.
Great, Griffin.
All right, I am Griffin Groethe. I'm 24. I have a 7-1 myopathy. I am from Minnesota. I went to school at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota for undergrad, and I'm currently there for postgrad as well. Just about to finish in about a month. I majored in marketing in undergrad, and for postgrad, I am doing organizational ethics and compliance. And I'm also looking for a new job. I'm currently in between jobs right now. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks, Griffin. Katie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm Katie Nelson, and I am actually also from Minnesota. I went to Augsburg University, majored in mathematics, and got a job working at Target Corporate as a data analyst. And that's where I've been for the past almost 8 years. I'm 30 years old. I have college in 6. And what I like to do most for fun are either read or cook. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Simon, would you like to go next? You're muted, Simon. It's okay.
All right. Hi, I'm Simon. I'm 39 years old. Graduated from Villanova University with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. I currently work as a senior inside sales engineer at Kierra Corporation, where we design air conditioning systems. In my spare time, I tinker with cars.
Thanks, Simon. Last but not least, Kelly, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm based in Ohio. I'm 33, also CMD-affected with college in 6. I went to school at University of Kentucky. I majored in journalism and communications. And yeah, I currently work for Kierra CMD doing outreach and engagement. So happy to be here with you guys.
Great. So we have panelists today of really all ages during the young adult years. So we're going to go in order from high school all the way to living independently in terms of the topics we cover today. All right, so now diving into it. So I'm going to start off with Kierra. Do you think you could please share your story on adjusting from middle school to high school and really what adapting to more peers and a new and bigger school and really like fresh admin and teachers and what that was all like?
So I was actually very lucky when it came to my middle to high school transition because from elementary school to high school, I nearly had the same people that were with me for every transition. So my IEP coordinator from elementary school also works at the high school with the 504 plan, I believe. So I was very, very lucky to have kind of sort of a team that worked up with me. And the only thing I can really say that like just generalizes everything is that high school is very exciting, but also nerve-wracking because obviously it's bigger and the layout of the school might be different. So you're going to have to be very careful about where your classes are and where are the elevators, if there are any, where ramps and stuff like that. And my story, I believe it was at the end of 8th grade, we went into a conference room and we went over everything that I had in middle school in terms of accessibility and accommodations and which of those accommodations I will need when I move to high school. Most of those are taking tests on the computer. I need a wheelchair seat. Most of my classes need to be kind of sort of near each other so that I have time to get to them during the transition period. And then when I actually got to high school, that was when we kind of had another meeting at the very beginning of the year with all of my teachers in the same room. And we just talked about accommodations and everything that I would need to succeed in class. And once again, luckily, all of my teachers were very, very kind and helpful. And freshman year was really, really great, but that was also when COVID hit. So I wasn't able to get the whole like freshman experience, but now that I'm back as a junior, now we are able to have like the whole fun experience. But almost every year of high school is sort of a smaller transition between the grades because you're going to need different things for each grade. Like for freshman year, I only needed the seats in the classroom. I only needed like for finals, I had to take them on the computer. But now that I'm a junior and less of my classes require finals, I had to start focusing more on like the ACT, the SAT, stuff like that. And other clubs or organizations I would join outside of class that would require accommodations. So yeah, high school is very, very fun for me. I'm very lucky that I had a good experience with that transition.
Cool. Molly, what was navigating your personal social life adjustments like in terms of opportunities of engagement, attending athletic or after school activities, or even just hanging out with friends during high school?
Well, definitely, involved a lot of coordinating with my parents, driving me back and forth to school. And I was really involved in extracurriculars after school. So I would, and also, join the bathroom and stuff like that, have to coordinate with my parents a lot. And yeah, so and then I'm just trying to think. Yeah, like just good like time management skills, just really making sure you oh yeah, so for a period of time, we had like a family calendar where we all put our activities on one calendar, and that way like my parents and I and my sisters could see, okay, on this day one of us needs to be at school at this time, or like needs to be picked up. And that was really helpful, I think, for coordinating, using the car, because we only have one accessible van. And yeah, and also, just still making enough time to do all their homework and schoolwork. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. How do you feel your needs got met both in school and at social events in high school? And like, do you have any tips you feel were helpful to you during that time?
I guess just like really, if I had like a concern talking to somebody in charge, like just not being afraid to do that. Sometimes that can be intimidating, but I find that like a lot of times if I just talk to somebody, they're not going to make a big deal about it. Usually, if I go to a club meeting for like National Honor Society and I can't participate in the event because it's in the room that doesn't, I can't get into the room or something because there's stairs. Usually people don't, like, they might not think about that right away unless you talk to them about it and bring it to their attention. So, but like most of the time, people are more than willing to accommodate if you just bring that to their attention.
Good, because that does happen a lot where it's not something that people automatically think about, but it's something that we do need to think about. And I hope that over time, people start thinking about it just after those kinds of situations. Kierra, do you ever think about planning for the future and options for post-secondary education and any career and college goals? You're a junior in high school, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely it's that's honestly one of the scariest parts about junior year is that almost everything revolves around making sure that you can do what you want to do in the future if you know what you want to do. And when it comes to college, I personally want to go to college. But the main issue is, am I going to go in of state or out of state? Because if I want to get like home care, I think like government provided assistance, I would have to be like a citizen of the state that I'm going to or something like that. So it would be very, very difficult for me to get like relatively cheap 24/7 care that I would need in order to succeed in college. So I had to kind of sort of narrow down which schools I wanted to go to so I can still attend college in North Carolina. And honestly, the main thing about college is making sure that the campus is accessible to the level that you want it to be. Because the word accessible is nearly like objective and subjective at the same time, because I personally really like schools where everything is flat. There aren't a lot of like bricks or cracks in the ground, but other people might they might just only be looking for a school that has like ramps or like elevators, stuff like that, which it's all up to personal preference really. But I am really looking forward to college because then I will have more freedom to do stuff where I won't have to, I'll be able to be more independent and not have to like rely on others as much. So I'm going to go to college, and I believe that I will major in communications with specialization in public relations. And I will be going to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And I am actually doing a internship, which is in the communications like area. I will be working at the Seacrest Studios at a local children's hospital, where I will be able to run a radio/TV station for all the kids staying at that hospital. And all of that is like networking and planning and seeing what you can and can't do, because I kind of want to get a job, but it's really hard to find jobs that I'm physically able to do that do offer a good pay, especially around my local area. I live in the greater Charlotte area, and it's honestly really exciting that I am able to do an internship, because it's not really a job, but I still get that experience, which is really important, especially for when I go to college, because high school and college are completely different from each other. So it's very important that you have a plan, if that makes sense. You definitely want to have a plan, and you want to have some semblance of what you think you might want to do in the future, so that you're able to, you know, talk to your family, talk to your guidance counselor, which is what I have been doing a lot. It's all high school to college is a more exciting transition than middle school to high school. So it's definitely something to look forward to if you do plan on going to college.
Cool, that's awesome, Kierra. Very exciting for you. We also have a question in the chat. Do you utilize a wheelchair full time? If so, did you have a buddy to help you at school?
So I do use a motorized wheelchair full time, unless I am in my home, and then I just use a walker because I can still use my legs to scoot myself around when I'm sitting down. But in my school, I use my motorized wheelchair, and I don't really have a buddy. I have a assistant who is primarily in charge of helping me use the bathroom and helping me move between classes. So her name is Susan. She is the best, and the district hired her so that she helps me pack up, and then she helps me go to my other class, and then she helps me unpack with everything that I know I'll need. But she doesn't stay in the classroom with me. She usually helps out in the library during class time when I don't need her. But I do have kind of sort of that designated friend in each class who is a student in charge of helping me if I do need something from my backpack. But yeah, that's it.
Cool. So just shifting our focus a little bit to the college journey, Annie, do you think you could tell us about really what the search was like for finding the right college, finding accessible, friendly campuses, picking a career, remote learning versus in-person learning?
Yeah, so finding accessible, friendly colleges can be a challenge. For me, it was kind of all about a balance. So finding a college that's good for my major, but also one that makes sense financially and had enough accommodation. So I decided to major in actuarial science because that's a career that pays a lot, and I like math, so it was a good fit for me and made sense for me physically. With my disability, it's a computer job that I can do, and so after I chose that major, I kind of just Googled a list of all of the best colleges for that major, and then also cross-matched that with a list of all of the best wheelchair-friendly colleges and see what kind of matches came across. And so I narrowed it down to the University of Illinois, and it was able to kind of connect with their Disability Resource Center before I even attended, to kind of see what accommodations they could provide, to see what made it kind of stand out. And I know that's one of the topics later to kind of talk about the different, accommodations. So I'll get to that later. But in terms of picking a career, definitely keep in mind financial, payoff in the end. So it has to be a career that you would enjoy, but also a career that kind of pays a lot. I find that being in a wheelchair is a very expensive lifestyle, not by choice, and that relying on government programs, usually you have to have a limited income and different assets requirements, and those can kind of be annoying to work around. So at least in my circumstance, I figured out that if I can just have a job that pays the bills and not have to worry about those programs, that's might be the better option for me. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Did you look into a financial aid and or any potential scholarship opportunities during that?
Yeah, so for financial aid, you can always apply for as many scholarships as you can. You can use the wheelchair card. Sometimes that helps, but not just scholarships. I looked into different government programs. So I used vocational rehab, and it actually varies a lot by state. So for example, I'm from Utah, and what they could offer me for Utah State University wasn't that much. But if I went to Illinois and became a resident there, they could offer me a lot more, even though I wasn't even originally from Illinois. So it really varies a lot by state. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. So if you are considering those states, feel free to reach out to me about my experience, and I'm sure Kierra CMD can connect you, but definitely, don't limit your options, apply for where you can, but also look into vocational rehab and different programs like that. They can also help you out too.
Cool. Griffin, anything you would like to add to that, or do you think it was fairly similar? Was there a disability resource center at your campus?
Yes, so there was, and at my experience at St. Thomas, it was a fantastic place to be at. Everybody there. I guess in my experience, I applied there. I applied for the accommodations, I think maybe the May or April before I attended. And over the summer, you're kind of in constant contact to set everything up. And then once the school year starts, I think for me, it was early August, I came in and, we kind of just had another conversation about, like, what are you going to need for this semester? You kind of got to go off a checklist, you get in contact with your professors. And for me, yeah, they're really great. A lot of things that they can do for you, either that each school does, or sometimes it's required by law, is I got a couple more absence days. I know each class is different for each professor, but sometimes if you have days where you just don't have any energy or can't, staying at home is a much better option. There are many things that you can do to kind of help with that. You can get more accessible equipment. Sometimes they have ways that you can dictate a paper. You can just say it out loud, and they can have programs that type it for you. You can have more time to take tests, more time to write essays, and just also too with building off the resource center as well. It just asking your professors to directly. Each professor can do something a little bit different for you based on each assignment. I know for a few papers I had, I asked for a few extensions. Just on some days, some weeks I was not feeling very well at all, very low energy, and they granted me an extension. So all of your professors there, they want to see you succeed and they want to see you do well. So I think advocating for yourself and being in contact with the resource center and with your professors, you can get a plan that really works well for you.
Cool. Did they offer a mentor or like on campus on-call helper or a PCA for assistance?
I believe they did, yes. It was a while ago, but yeah, that was one of the options.
Annie, do you have anything different? Yeah.
Yeah, so the University of Illinois actually has a really great program for personal care assistants. That's actually why I was really looking at that college. The program is called the Beckwith program, and they have this really new dormitory where 26 rooms are on the bottom floor or like state-of-the-art wheelchair accessible with wide hallways, automatic doors, light switches that are lower. They even have ceiling lifts if you need help transferring from your bed to the bathroom, your chair. They teach you how to train fellow students as staff for personal care assistants. They have 24/7 people there. You know, if there's ever an emergency, they think out everything. And so it was really a great program. Unfortunately, there's only 26 rooms. So my year, I was on the wait list. So they still helped me out and they gave me a separate accessible room on a different floor. But they still taught me how to, advocate for myself, hire my own personal care assistants by fellow students. University of Illinois is a great college for that. And even though I was not from Illinois, I was offered, different financial situations that made it worth it going there, even though I was out of state. And not just that program, the University of Illinois has a lot of other really cool specific accommodations. So for example, you can get elective credit where you can do one-on-one physical therapy and it counts as college credit. So get college credit for stuff you should be doing anyway. They had a Special Olympics training center at the university and they had like a wheelchair basketball team. I knew almost like 50 people in wheelchairs at this school. Like it has a lot of perks to it. All of the buses were wheelchair accessible. But they even had like a group of smaller wheelchair accessible buses where you can call them up and they'll take you wherever you wanted, even like after, work hours. So if there was a late event, I used that a lot. If there were no electronic textbooks available, the Disability Resource Center would scan every single page for you. If you need help taking notes, the professor will provide lecture notes or like a fellow classmate will take notes for you. There's just a lot that they offered and it was really extensive. So I know that most colleges will have a disability research program, but this one was just really thought out and they kind of just gave it all to you, and they had all these accommodations that they've done and you don't have to advocate for yourself as much because they already have done this so many times for so many other students. So my experience, I was kind of spoiled at the University of Illinois because of all of their things they offered. So that was kind of my experience. Definitely it is hard living on your own because I was from Utah, which is super far away from Illinois. I needed personal care assistance. And so there were definitely times where someone would show up late and I'd be worried that I would be late to class, or the fire alarm would go off in the middle of the night and I couldn't evacuate by myself. Different situations came up, but there's always ways to figure out those, and living on your own kind of gives you that sense of independence and freedom, and you just get a really it's scarier, but it's honestly a more rewarding experience. So yeah, that was my experience at the University of Illinois.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think also just hearing some of the stuff that Annie went over in terms of accommodations, I know personally that a lot of those sounded familiar just because they can also be applied to like high school or middle school with like an IEP or a 504. So just know that if you're not at that college chapter yet, those are some things that you can bring up and you can have access to, which are very helpful. But Kelly, do you have anything to add in terms of your own experience? How did you decide whether you wanted to live at home versus on campus?
Yeah, for me, I just kind of like Andy said, I wanted to just dive in and just be independent, and definitely say I struggled for sure. But I think doing that helped me find my voice and realize that, hey, I need to speak up and ask for the things that I need, and people are there to help you. We just need to figure that out. And again, I would say also my disability resource center at my college. I chose to go to a bigger state school, so it was like 30,000 at University of Kentucky, just because I knew that there probably already been a lot of wheelchairs before me. So hopefully, the accommodations were maybe probably already there, or they've already helped or kind of paved the way, so to speak. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of get away and just dive in and be on my own. And yeah, I definitely realized that, speaking up and then also utilizing the resource center, like they're there to advocate for you. So I would try to solve things or talk to my professors or my dorm or whatever I needed first. And then if I needed another voice to kind of back me up or say, hey, like legally you have to do this for her, or, she needs this for this reason. And just getting people to see like why they need to make those changes or what, those kind of things could kind of open their eyes to see like that's what they need to live daily. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think also knowing that if there are some situations that you do need to figure out a lot of stuff, which happens, I think knowing that you are helping them improve it for someone else in the long run, and someone who comes after you, maybe who could possibly be in the same situation, that you helped improve that. So I think that's really nice to know. But Annie, what was transferring your medical care to on campus? And like, did you have a doctor on call or your doctor on call? And what was that all like?
Yeah, and with rare diseases, it's kind of hard because you might, at least for me, I did meet with a neurologist and a pulmonologist on campus, near campus, just to get connected. But they're not as familiar with my type of muscular dystrophy, so you kind of have to advocate and kind of train them for your specifics. But I found that it was helpful. I never really needed it, but in case I ever got sick, it'd be good to have that connection, just so that they meet you and know you before you're hospitalized for pneumonia or something like that. So it's definitely good to make connections, but you might not always get doctors who know your disability, which is kind of common, unfortunately.
Yeah, it definitely is common. It is not a good feeling knowing that they don't know about your disease or anything like that. It definitely isn't. But what was handling your course load and controlling your day-to-day schedule like? Did you have any attendance issues? Maybe the weather or your health impacted your ability to attend classes? Griffin, I know you mentioned that if you wanted to touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so definitely the day-to-day kind of responsibilities and workload, I think, in my experience, was a little dynamic, I think, based on seasons too, because also I live in Minnesota, so when there's ice and snow on the ground, I'd say getting on is a little bit more difficult than in the summer when you don't have to worry about having snow block an area, or I think also too just the idea of constantly kind of thinking about like this is just for me on campus too, is like, how am I going to get here? How do I take this path and go this way to get to this one room? And I think with the weather too, that kind of changed that. But I say on a day-to-day basis, one big thing for me, I think for a lot of us too, is just like energy levels. And some days I just can't, I can't go to class, or I need that day just to kind of stay and rest. And I think kind of you can't plan that out all the time. You can't like predict some days that you're gonna feel good or not feel good. But I think one thing that can be helpful is kind of the days that you do feel good, try to maybe do a little bit more homework that you can foresee that's due later on in the week. So if you have a day that comes up where you aren't feeling that great, you kind of have more of that cushion. And also too, just communicating with your professors, like I mentioned before, is they are very understanding and they want you to do well. So if you kind of just shoot them an email or kind of bring up, hey, I'm not feeling well today, or even if it's a week or two thing or even longer, you can make a lot of effective plans with that too.
Cool. Annie, in terms of graduate studies and grad school, and any thoughts on that, like whether it is the right choice are not for you because we know everyone is different. And like virtual, which can like possibly forego your salary versus in person.
So for me, I didn't go to grad school. I just did the bachelor's degree. So maybe this is a better question for Griffin, but for my career, instead of a grad school, I just take certification exams while I have a job. So I'm graduated from college, I'm making money, but I still take all these formal professional exams to become an actuary. So a bit different, but for me, grad school wasn't something I was really considering.
Griffin, was it the same for you or not?
Yeah, so I'm almost completed grad school. So I originally didn't plan to go to grad school at the time that I did. Just because I was thinking about doing it at some point, just to kind of further my education, and I think too, like Annie said, kind of with the financial aspect too, like furthering that your education can open more doors in that regard, as well. But what happened for me is 2 years ago I was a senior in undergrad, and when COVID hit, I had an internship, and a lot of my classmates had internships and jobs, and we kind of all lost all of them. So I kind of thought to myself, well, I don't know with COVID how things are going to go. Why not just kind of, probe out there and see if there's options that would work for me at this time. I found a degree which I liked, and also at St. Thomas to do post grad at the same school. You get a pretty good amount off for your tuition. So I thought this was maybe a good sign. So I did it, and yeah, I think it was a good option. But I think for everyone, it's kind of weighing what your current situation is at the time and kind of seeing where I want to be and how things work for my life and lifestyle at the moment. So I think a lot of it's kind of planning, and with where I was, it was a little more, I wouldn't say spontaneous, but because, this huge thing kind of came into place. I think kind of moving with your situation, kind of being fluid with that too, is a good way to, anything can change. And I think making as much as a good decision as you can at the time. So if that was concise, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so now Katie and Simon, let's talk about independent living and how to make it your own and how to find assistance. Katie, do you think you could touch on finding confidence and stability to take on your care solo and being in charge of your day-to-day life, and how to advocate for yourself and your needs?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, first off, I feel like college was kind of a trial run for a lot of that. It was maybe my first time to live out on my own, trying to advocate for finding care, managing schedules. I'm finding that being as organized as possible is super, super key, especially so say you have maybe 7 different personal care assistants that will help you throughout the week, because everyone only wants to do a very short part-time job. And so you have to manage the schedules for all of those 7 individuals to come and help manage your care, whether that's in the mornings, in the evenings, throughout the day. So I feel like being organized is seriously one of the best skills that you can develop as an affected individual who's trying to live independently. Finding your voice to make sure that you are getting done what needs to get done. Maybe you have a list of like 5 things that you would love to get done within a certain time frame, but you prioritize 2 of them. Like 2 activities need to get done within this time frame, and the others would be kind of bonus. And sure, it'd be great to get it done, but if you can't, no big deal. So time management, organization, and knowing exactly what you need and going after that, I think are some key messages to portray.
Yeah, definitely. Simon, are there any resources, tools, or creative life hacks on how to get by on your own for you?
I'd say like I know when I was going through a lot of these issues like post-college, like able accounts didn't exist and now they do. So at least from a financial standpoint, I know when you start working, there can be Medicare buy-in programs like medical assistance for workers with disabilities where you still have a somewhat of a financial limit. So if you're working and you are buying into a Medicare buy-in program where you maintain your Medicare benefits, but you're paying to keep it, you still have that financial limit. So having an ABLE account that kind of sidesteps that, limit, as well as any income related disability expenses. So anything that you have to pay out of pocket, whether it's like a medical copay for a appointment to some medical equipment that you pay out of pocket, that is basically deducted from your overall income, and the state will take that into account. So as long as you stay below that limit, you maintain your Medicare benefits. With the advent of ABLE accounts, it's been very nice to kind of have that, because you can take whatever excess like savings and all that, and you can put that into an ABLE account and it's not counted against you. So it's sort of like having a excess slush fund to kind of keep your savings and you still maintain all your Medicare benefits. Having that has been a nice sort of game changer, because you don't necessarily have to worry about that worry of exceeding that limit and having that risk of losing your benefits.
Katie touched on this a little bit, but how do you manage caregivers, whether that be their schedules, their pay, and that kind of stuff, and how and where to recruit them and how to pay for them?
It's been Katie has actually like expressed a lot of the same things that I was going to say. So it can be a little bit difficult. You kind of not only have to like sort of try and work out like what you need to get done, and you have to work with them, but you also have to like deal with like the different personalities that each of the nurses have, like each of your PCAs have, and some people you can kind of like get a feeling like, all right, I can work with them more easily and I can get more stuff done with this particular PCA or nurse versus another. Like assess everybody's like strengths and weaknesses, and you kind of work with their strengths and some of the PCAs and nurses, and you work with some of the strengths of some of the other PCAs and nurses that you have that you do work with, and you kind of like use all their strengths and to kind of like shore up some of the weaknesses that some of your other PCAs and nurses have. And if you do that, hopefully, if you kind of figure that all out, you can get, whatever you need to get done in a timely manner.
I can add on to that and give a little bit more
Yeah.
background too about my experience. So I'm on Medicare, and my personal care assistance, my services get paid for through the state. When it came time to choose a company to work with to kind of handle pay, I researched the one in Minnesota that paid the best, and I ended up with AcroCare. Now, AcroCare has two programs: PCA Traditional, where the company assigns a caregiver, and PCA Choice, where I would have to find a caregiver and then the company would hire them. So I decided to be part of the latter program because I wanted to make sure to find a caregiver that was a good fit for me. Now, finding PCAs during college was much easier because I'd post flyers all over campus and get hits immediately because it was an on-campus job. Once I moved downtown Minneapolis for my job after college, it became harder to find caregivers to hire I've used a variety of strategies by still putting up flyers at nearby universities, sometimes emailing professors and asking them to share my job opportunity with their students. I've posted my job position on some online websites like care.com, and also word of mouth has worked decent. I will say that I've had a lot of turnover over the years, and I think that's just kind of par for the course when it comes to caregivers and PCAs. A lot of the times, I think you'll find university students that are interested in that job or might need some of those PCA hours where they could actually count that for some of their requirements for their programs, like a nursing program or an occupational therapy program or a physical therapy program. And so a lot of times students are really kind of the way to go and to market to try and find caregivers. At least that's been my experience so far. Other aspects of managing caregivers include, learning how to interview them, training, scheduling, writing recommendation letters when they leave, and always showing kindness and patience as they learn how to work with and for you. These individuals become a huge part of your life, oftentimes friends, and it's important to get along. I've even been invited to a few of my old PCA's weddings before, and it's just a really fun experience, a really neat connection to have.
Yeah, and in school, I personally have a TA, kind of like what Kierra was touching on, but I find that you really do make a connection with them. And like one of them that I really made a connection with, she's not my TA anymore. She went on to grad school, but we still stay like in touch like a lot, and now we're just kind of friends. And whenever my TA this year is out sometimes, and I may just text her and be like, are you free this day? And she'll be like, oh yeah, and she'll come be my TA for the day. So it's like you really do make connections with them. And that's really nice. And if you don't, it's fine. Like it doesn't really need to be a friendship. I've had those different experiences of having a TA that is like a really good friend, and you do make a really good connection with them. But I've also had a TA where I'm like a little iffy about that, just because I feel like I don't really need to make a friendship with them. And they're just there to help me and kind of be invisible, so that they're not there, technically, even though they're helping you. So I do think making that connection is a really nice thing. But Katie, have you had to make any housing modifications, ramps, wide doorways, elevator or lift, and from like level to level, roll in shower and that kind of stuff?
Sure, yeah, I can touch on that. So when I was looking for an apartment in downtown Minneapolis, a friend and I who had decided to room together, we took the light rail downtown to tour a few places. Now, I had a lot of considerations. This place had to have an elevator. It had to have cutouts under the countertops in the kitchen and the bathroom for easier access, lower light switches, handles instead of doorknobs, a removable shower head in the tub. I mean, maybe some other considerations that I'm not coming to mind right now, but some of these modifications are easy for an apartment building to update themselves if needed, but they also must allow you to work with an outside contractor for any reasonable accommodations. So in my case, that was actually getting an automatic door opener installed from a third party so that I could get in and out of the apartment on my own. Now, finding an accessible unit that was available also proved to be tricky because most apartment buildings, I mean, if they have one, they only have like one or two. And so I did have to be put on a waiting list in order to be able to get one of those accessible units. And so trying to look as early as possible can be beneficial, but always know that to advocate for yourself and what you might need when it comes to modifications. and bring that up to the apartment building. Per ADA rules, I mean, they need to allow for any reasonable accommodations, and you should not be charged for them. So there is that.
Yeah, definitely. Simon, do you find yourself planning ahead and budgeting and understanding your necessities and trying to create routines?
Yes. I find myself very much a creature of routine. I always tend to take my paycheck and like budget out, certain amount of my funds to savings, certain amount to like allocate to incidentals, like any potential like something were to go wrong. Like recently my microwave like kind of went on the fritz, and it's a separate microwave that was different than what is already in my apartment, because the one that was built into my kitchen unit in my apartment is out of my reach. So I got another microwave and I put it on top of one of my counters, and I use that all the time. I've had it ever since I moved in, and I'd say 2 weeks ago, it just decided to stop working. So I'm like, oh crap, like, how am I gonna like heat up my food in the morning? How am I gonna, cook, heat up dinner and stuff? So luckily I set aside a slush fund for incidentals like this. So I was able to just right away, I just went on Amazon, I bought a microwave, and in like, the next day I had a microwave like, delivered right outside my door, and I just opened that thing up, put it on the counter, and, took my old microwave and, took that to the recycling center and recycled that. And, it was a very easy, like, brief period of downtime where, I didn't have something. I always tend to have contingency plans for everything if something were to go wrong. If something happened to my car, I would have, some funds allocated to make sure that I can get it repaired fairly quickly. Yeah, it's just something that I've kind of learned to do as a habit over the years, especially after living on my own.
Yeah. Kelly, do you think you could talk a little on managing medications and doctor's appointments and by yourself and taking over your full health leadership and insurance and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So when I did go away to school, it was like an hour and a half from home. So a lot of my doctors, I would try to schedule visits either over summer or winter breaks. That kind of like Annie said, there aren't specialists that really know, all about you. So, but yes, I would just after college, I kind of started taking on my own appointments and managing that. But yeah, I just try to stay on top of it, like realizing, oh, I need to see this doctor every 6 months or every year, this and that. It is a lot to kind of transition from, your parents kind of doing that throughout most of your life. And then having that added on to your day-to-day stuff that, oh yeah, you need to do this, or you need to order more supplies for your BiPAP or whatever your needs are. It's kind of a lot to take on. It's like another job in itself to remember to get all of the things that you need. But yeah, it's definitely something that's, you need to learn and kind of, I guess, transition into. That is really important to stay on top of your care.
Yeah, definitely. Could you also touch on workplace readiness and being prepared for employment and achieving career goals and just kind of like what that was like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, I guess my senior year out of college, it was really important for me to be able to drive independently. That was a big thing for me because I realized I kind of live more out in the suburbs. So I'm not by like a major city that's like public transit. So there weren't many options for me to like get out and about. So I definitely started with my vocational rehab, which I know some mentioned before. So for me, it was definitely my first biggest step was trying to learn how to drive and like get my license, get a vehicle funded, like all those things, so that I could, you know, start going out independently by myself to get into work and to do those things. That was my first biggest step. And it's a long process. For me, I feel like it's something that you have to really want to do, because it is pretty expensive, and finding the funds and everything, it's like a lot to do on top of what else you have day to day. But that was really important for me, and that's something that I went after, and yeah, was able to get work and do independent things and be able to drive myself. So
Yeah. So for older guys, how much do your parents still play a role in providing assistance, or say in terms of like insurance and managing stuff and that kind of stuff? Anyone can take that if you want.
My parents don't do anything. Yeah, I basically handle everything on my own, all insurance, doctor's appointments, nursing care, yeah, all of that. I basically taken that upon myself to handle all of that.
In my experience, when I was living independently downtown Minneapolis, I had my parents as backup caregivers in case any of my current PCAs might get sick or not be available one week because maybe of a class load or a visit to their own families or a trip that they were taking. So my parents were really kind of backups to come help as needed because they were only 30 minutes away from where I lived. Other than that, I was able to manage everything on my own independently. Think cooking, think getting to work, think taking care of the place that I lived, going out to see friends and hanging out, a whole host of things. So that's kind of been my experience.
yeah, I would agree with that too. Definitely my parents were backups. I said there were times in college when I unfortunately had PCAs that were no shows or last minutes, and I would be frantically calling them like, can you come? Like, I need help. And so thankfully I have awesome parents that were able to step in when I needed. And I would say I mostly would manage my own like doctor's appointments and other things. I would say I would consult with them sometimes on like the bigger things, like, hey, they're saying I might need this test or this operation or this and that. So definitely, you know, obviously get their opinions and have them be a part of my health journey, but definitely mainly me, obviously. So, but yeah, that's been my experience.
Cool. Kierra, do you think you could touch on a little bit? You mentioned the internship. Do you think you could mention and touch on what like finding that was like and that kind of stuff?
So it's actually like I got it mainly through networking. It's because I know someone who knows someone. I'm actually friends with the like head like arts coordinator at the hospital because I started doing a lot of public speaking and like advocacy and charity work with Make-A-Wish as well. So I found the internship because I know her and she just asked me, hey, you seem really, really good at this. Do you maybe want to apply for the internship? And I applied, did the interviews, and I got in. But I know many of my other friends just found them through the websites or even through my school's like guidance counseling center. That is what they do a lot. Like you just have to take a X amount of classes in a specific like area, whether it's like science or mathematics or public relations, like graphic design, stuff like that. And then they will help you find a internship in whatever you want to specialize in that will be easy to access, especially with your schedule. So for me, I was also very lucky because it was easy for me to find and apply. And that's really all the advice that I have. But in the end, you have to make sure that it is right for you and that it's the best thing that you can do. Because I can do the internship, or I could do like summer classes or a job or stuff like that.
Yeah, because I know like a lot of people our age are not quite at like the age to actually find a job, or employers like won't take us. So I know that like an internship is like very important and like a very good option for that.
Yeah.
But Molly, you are a freshman in college, right? So do you think you could touch on, since you're a little bit more like it, since it was a little bit more recent, do you think you could touch on what your experience was with that? Like you go to the University of Florida?
Yeah, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely like getting job experience is important. I've noticed like now that I'm at college, finding a job that I'm also under Medicare, so I'm Medicaid and I can't get a job that really pays. It has either paid really well or not pay at all, so it doesn't go over the limit, which can be hard if you're just starting out with no experience, because nobody's gonna give you a really good job with you doing it with no experience. So like getting something like an internship like Kierra is doing is really good, just so like you can go to interviews and show people that you have experience. And definitely a college like a big college like University of Florida, there's a lot of opportunities for on-campus jobs. So like at the Student Union Center, we have like a bunch of different jobs. You can work at like the help desk, or at like the different dorm facilities on campus. You'll work at like the front desk, checking people in. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. And
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
for people like us who may not be able to lift things, do a lot of physical work. It doesn't have to be physical.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't have to be physical, or it could be in person or remote, really whatever suits your needs and what you're most comfortable with. But all right, so Simon, last question. You are going to jump right on answering this question. So keep it short so we can move on to the audience Q&A. But transportation, getting to and from work, community outings, what is that like?
I do drive. I do have a vehicle that is converted for me to drive independently. So my job dictates that I do need to be able to be somewhat mobile. So there's times where I have to go to the office. There can be times where I, have a normal work day where it's like 8 to 5. There are times where I don't get home till like maybe 9 o'clock at night. There can be times where I don't go to the office, but I have to be somewhere else for my job. So that's always constantly changing. It's been nice having that flexibility to be able to drive independently is a very useful thing, especially in my particular line of work.
Yeah, definitely. But all right, so does anyone have anything else they want to add? It could be something like completely random and off topic that we've covered, or another one of your experiences.
I would just have I was gonna ask something about like the hiring like care process. It's definitely, if you're somebody who requires skilled nursing, it's a lot more difficult than even just finding personal care assistants, because that's another layer of like, narrowing down the field of, people you're looking for, because skilled nursing means just like RNs and LPNs, I believe. So, and that's the kind of care I need, and I found that it's been a lot more difficult, especially with COVID. The travel nursing has kind of had a trickle down effect on that, and yeah, it's really just been a nightmare. But that, honestly, that's probably like the most difficult part about transition, is finding care.
Yeah. Anyone have anything else they want to add?
I would agree with that, Molly, definitely, for sure. I know my first dive into college, I kind of, like others, it's mentioned, posted around campus as far as like finding care that I needed. And it can be really discouraging. I remember I had like maybe 25 interviews and like 10 showed up. So it's a lot, like, oh my gosh, like, and then you kind of get worried, like, is this going to happen when they actually show up to take care of you? So it can be really easy to like get discouraged. But I would say don't let that stop you. There are good people out there that want to help and want to care. It's just finding them is always a struggle. But yeah, definitely don't get discouraged. And I'd also say too, I definitely applied for a lot of academic scholarships, but there are a lot of like rare disease scholarships out there as well too. So definitely look into that. That was something that I was not aware of at the time. So I feel like I missed out on some funds there. So definitely do your research as far as scholarship opportunities. And yeah, use the rare disease ones as well, because that's a great one they want to help for sure. So
Kierra CMD has a young adult resource page on their website that has a lot of helpful resources for topics including education, housing, finance, the healthcare system, community, and more. It was also made by two CMB young adults, Kierra and I. So you can find it at kierracmd.org/YA. Moving on to audience Q&A.
I did notice one question in the chat related to disability benefits and how they might be impacted by employment benefits. And I thought I might really quickly touch on that. I want to say, do your research within your respective state for whatever programs are available under Medicare, and any like adjacent programs tied to Medicare. I know in my own experience, there's this program where you have not an asset limit, but an income threshold that is calculated specifically based on your own personal experiences. And so typically there are standardized income thresholds and they're pretty low. So if you have any decent paying job, you would not necessarily qualify for benefits. But if you can find some of these programs, like in Minnesota, it's called a 1619B program, they calculate an individual income threshold based on your own circumstances. What are your medical expenses, personal care expenses, all of that jazz. And you might be able to find one where the income limit is actually pretty high, meaning that you can still have a decent paying job and still get Medicare benefits in addition to your employer medical benefits. And that can be extremely helpful in covering medical expenses. One other thing I'll mention is that if you do have an income threshold and you're starting to get close to that with your job, one avenue that you can explore is doing more of a reduced work schedule. So I actually only work 4 days a week instead of 5. That was partly because 5 days a week made me really fatigued, and I could just barely get through my workday and not have any energy for anything else. So I went to a 4-day work schedule, but that also brought my income down a little bit, which means I was still well under my income threshold that I had in order to keep my medical benefits through the state. So look at the different programs that are available in your state. Sometimes you'll have to dig quite a bit to find something that might work, but it's well worth the effort.
Yeah,
I'd like to
definitely.
also kind of go on Katie's kind of reply as well. I know that I've had issues with getting very close to the income threshold due to my income as well. In some states, Pennsylvania included, there were asset limits as well. I kind of touched upon the able account as being a way to sort of sidestep that asset limit. There are disability expenses that Katie had also touched upon that can kind of will be taken into account and will be kind of deducted from your income. So that can reduce it as well. And I know that recently, at least as far as Pennsylvania is concerned, which is a state I live in, they actually passed a bill to eliminate the income and asset limits for anybody that's on a Medicare buy-in program, which is the program that I'm on. So at least as far as I'm concerned, I am no longer bound by any income or asset limit while still maintaining my Medicare benefits.
I believe there was another question in the chat earlier too, about if you guys were worried about the staff not accommodating something you needed. I'm not sure if that's PCA or professors, but for me, like what I would describe my needs to a PCA or whatever, I would say, hey, you need to be able to lift, you need to be able to do this. So I think outlining your needs and definitely make it clear what is expected of the job is definitely super helpful in being upfront about that. As far as like staff or professors, again, I think like my going to a bigger state school, like I would go into classes of like 200, 500. So I was just like a number. So sometimes I would wait for like office hours because sometimes through an email explaining your disability or your needs isn't really as clear. But if they see you, like physically see you, then they would realize, oh, okay, that's why she needs this, or that's why she needs that. So definitely, I think being seen in that sense with your professors and having that relationship, and then again, utilizing the Disability Resource Center to as a backup to say, hey, this is why this person needs this and that. But no, I don't think I was ever really worried about them not accommodating my needs. Sometimes it's just another step or more steps to take to get there to what you need. It shouldn't be that way, but hopefully in the future it'll be easier and better for others. But yeah.
We also have another one in the chat. Would someone talk about disclosing your disability in job interviews? And do you disclose in your resume or only after meeting in person?
I can take that. So you generally don't disclose in your resume that you have a disability, but if you get called for an interview, per ADA regulations, a company should provide any reasonable accommodations that you might need within that interview setting.
One thing I might add about that is, so I didn't have anything about my disability on my resume, but I did have that I hired and managed a staff of like a dozen personal care assistants. And I did get asked about that on my resume because most people don't have that, right? And so I kind of explained about how because of that experience, I'm more organized. I have to coordinate with all these schedules, kind of explain what that means. And I felt that people appreciated that experience, and that kind of added to what I had on my resume. And it also is a way for disclosing my disability that way too, just indirectly. So if you do have personal care assistants, that's something you can consider putting on your resume, is being an advocate and hiring staff is definitely a skill that is valuable.
Yeah, I had
second
a
that.
slightly
Mhm.
different experience in that one of the people that kind of was where I was going to be interviewed happened to be a classmate of mine in college. So he was well aware that I was disabled. He actually spoke quite highly of me when my resume was brought up during their search for a position at the company that I now work at. And basically, like, he saw my resume, he told the person that would end up becoming my supervisor, like, bring him in, he's good. I know how he works. He's good, he'll be a great asset to the company. I had my interview, I interviewed with my supervisor, and then I had an interview with my classmate, and that wasn't really an interview, that was just more like a, hey, how you doing? Like, how's everything? And he was very well aware of the needs that I needed to have in the office. I kind of went in prior to my start date and kind of went through the entire office and said, oh, we should probably change this. They also provided an accessible bathroom. They modified the break room so that I could reach the sink, the microwave, the fridge, so I can bring in food and heat up food as needed. They put in a power door on the entrance and exit. And they even provided me with a dedicated handicap spot for my vehicle. So I was parked very close to the office entrance and was able to get in and out very easily.
We also have another question in the chat, which I do think is pretty interesting. So anyone who wants to answer can go ahead. But do you ever feel like different, like you don't belong, or compared to like your other unaffected peers? Anyone want to touch on that?
I would say that at least outside of the people that I work with within the office, like anybody that I interact with outside of my office within the company are not even aware that I'm disabled.
I can bring up too that I think everyone in their own way feels different, whether that's because of a physical disability, from maybe an invisible disability, maybe from different family circumstances that are difficult at home that you might be dealing with, and you feel like, oh my gosh, people are going to know at work, or people are going to know within my friend group. I feel like everyone feels different in some way. So I want to say everyone would answer yes to that question. Yes, I do feel different at work sometimes because I'm oftentimes in a conference room and I am the only one in a wheelchair. But then again, maybe one other coworker and I always feel different also because we're the only two women in a room full of like 15 other men. And so maybe we feel different that way. Or maybe someone comes in and they have a cast on and maybe they feel different because like, oh, well, I made a stupid mistake and I, broke my leg skiing. People are going to think that I'm a chump or something. And it's like, well, everybody's going to feel different in their own way. And that's okay. It's how you deal with that matters. Even if you feel different, finding areas of commonality with different people will help alleviate that. And I guarantee you will always be able to find something in common with everybody, no matter what. You just have to search for it.
Yeah, and to like add on to that, very rarely is it like directly at the front of your mind. It's almost always this like underlying current thing. Because whenever I'm hanging out with my friends, like we're just talking about something completely random, but then I'm like, dang it, I can't open up my juice bag on my own. Can one of my friends help me? It's like kind of sort of this just subconscious thing where I always have to feel kind of like on edge, like I have my spider sense activated so that I don't do something that might make them emphasize how they think about me being in a wheelchair, stuff like that. Like my assistant, me needing help, like getting my food, stuff like that. But for the most part, like being like different in that sense is honestly somewhat rewarding, because one thing that I've heard from many of my friends is knowing how the world is today, knowing how the society in the United States is today, I'm really glad that I was able to get to know you as a disabled person, because you helped me realize that, hey, you are physically different, but like we literally have like the same mind, like we're on the same wavelength. And that's honestly one of the biggest compliments I get is helping people understand that we're not that different from each other, even though there are literal differences.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Like I know at my school I've been asked like to do articles, like interview. I'm interviewed for like 2 articles that were featured in like a local college newsletter, and it was talking about disability and just accessibility on campus. And one of the things that like the interviewer also is like just it's very eye-opening for them, because a lot of people don't know about this perspective of, like they don't see, oh, this is not a great design because it's not accessible. Why didn't they do it this way, which would have been cheaper and less, it would have been accommodating for everyone, instead of like putting in like 3 steps up to get into this building instead of just a ramp, which would be good for everybody instead of just some people. So it's just like having this perspective of being different, all those like can be challenging at times, but also makes your experience more, I guess, enriched, and also like teaches other people, broadens other people's view when you share your experience with them.
Yeah, I think for me, like I don't go around being like, or thinking all the time, like I'm in a wheelchair, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm in a wheelchair. This is just like how I do things. This is how I am. This is me. Like instead of my legs, I use a mobility aid. Like, but yeah, I don't think it's ever like on our mind all the time that like, I don't know. Sometimes I forget too. I'm just like, oh yeah, like, it's just me. It's just like a part of you that you live with and have to embrace. So.
Yeah, I can honestly say that I've had like more instances where I've had like coworkers forget that I'm disabled. Like we'll go out to lunch and the parking lot is full and they're like, oh, Simon, we set aside a spot for you. And I get to the spot, I'm like, yeah, I need a handicap spot, right? And then they're like, oh crap, we forgot. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't worry, I'll find something and I'll meet you inside. It's little stuff like that, but yeah, like I know they might feel a little bit bad, but I actually like kind of admire that, because I'm like, all right, like they don't see me as disabled, they just see me as a coworker, and it's kind of refreshing. And it's been like that for years. Like, I'm just another coworker in the office. I'm not, the one in the wheelchair. I'm not like the disabled one. I'm just me.
I think that was a great way to end the discussion. And oh, I think we have one more question. I think we have time for one more and then we'll start wrapping it up. But does anyone ask you the question why you're in a wheelchair?
Mostly little kids. I feel
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
It's not really why are you in a wheelchair? It's what happened.
Or
And
the
I just
stare.
like
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
or they're just stare. But I'm trying to remember where it was, but there was this one like really sweet. I think it was a little boy with his mom, and he just asked me, why are you like that or something like that? And the mom just had the best reaction, but she let me explain to him like it's something I was born with and stuff like that. And then he was like, and then I think he kept asking like her more questions or something like that. But like the fact that the mom took that initiative and was very respectful about it to like teach her son like to like educate him in that sense just made me like really happy.
I think most parents shut their kids down before you even get a chance to respond though. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think always being open to answering the question helps foster some sort of education to those within the community. And that will help eventually break down barriers that there are, especially in regards to ableism. And so I think that whenever you get asked a question related to, are you in a wheelchair or what happened or have you always been disabled, to be open to answering the question. You can certainly choose to refuse because I know oftentimes we get asked that question a lot and it can be kind of exhausting to always try and educate the public about disability and our experiences. I think it does go a long way though towards helping reduce some of those barriers. Advocacy is always important. So if you're
I
up to
can't,
it, answer.
I can't tell you how many times where like I'll be getting out of my car, like trying to get lunch, and I just get stares from people. Like they see like my ramp door open up and the ramp comes out, and I'm just like, running out of my car to like go grab my lunch to like, go back in my car and like rush back to the office. And there's people that have stopped me like dead in my tracks, like you can drive. I'm like, yeah, I would explain, but I really gotta go grab my lunch and get back to work. They're like, wait a minute, you work? I'm like, yeah, I work at an office. I'm like right around the corner, but I don't have a lot of time. I gotta go get my lunch and get back to work. And there's been other instances where I spent half an hour like, explaining to a person like, yeah, this is how I drive. This is, this is how I get around. This is, I do work. They're like, oh, where do you get this stuff? Like, where do you get your chair? Where do you, get your vehicle done, and et cetera, et cetera. And it is nice to explain when I do have the time to do so. But yeah, I can't even tell you like how many times I've had like people utterly shocked that, I'm able to do what I'm able to do. And to kind of see that response has been very nice.
All right. Well, I guess we'll start to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our very insightful panelists. We're so thankful for you guys. We hope you found value in hearing their stories and experiences in this chapter of teens' lives. Stay tuned for more info on our next webinar as we continue our Kierra CMD webinar series. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at outreach@kierracmd.org. We're more than happy to answer any questions, whether that be about the webinar or other Kierra CMD programming. So registration is now open for SciFam this summer. We're very excited to be back in person and to be heading down to Nashville June 30th to July 3rd. There's also a virtual option. For more information, to register for the conference and to subscribe for email updates, you can go to scifam.info. We will also be holding a young adult program during the family part of the conference. We have a variety of panels and sessions lined up that will be very fun and informative as well. And we would love to keep the conversation going. So share with us what you learned today by tagging us at CareCMD on socials, and you can use the hashtag CMD transitions. And yeah, so thanks everyone again for joining us. We hope to see you at our next webinars, and have a great rest of your weekend.